Owain Yeoman and Tim Kang aren't real cops, but they're
TV police!
the TV police.
Cheryl Starbuck, script supervisor. We are so lucky to be joined by you today, Cheryl. You are, and I say this with absolute sincerity, one of my favorite on-set presences from The Mentalist. And when I think of The Mentalist, I can't help but think of
Cheryl
you
took care of
just
it so good. Yeah.
tirelessly taking care of business, right? I mean, the script supervisor's work is just never done.
Yeah.
And I think it's no coincidence that every script supervisor I've ever worked with is female, because I actually think that it's a job that will make a man's head explode, because there's just so much attention to detail and so much concurrent stuff you have to keep up in the air. Tell us all about the job of the script supervisor, Cheryl.
You know, that's interesting that you should say that most of the script supervisors you've met have been female, because originally it was a male's position. In the film business, it was the script supervisors were male. And I don't know, I'm not quite sure, but probably during the time that, because movies came out in the 20s, 30s, I guess talkies came out in the 30s. And during that time, men had to go to war, so that would leave women to do those jobs. So I'm sure that's why more women took over the job of being a script supervisor.
I love that we got a little history lesson as well. My mom would be happy with that. My mom's a history teacher.
Be real, but I'm not going to let the truth get in the way of a good story. So who knows?
It's a great story. And in fact, let's just make that canon from now on. I noticed a little bit of merch there. Well, if we're all doing the merch thing, sure, I get it. I see your mentalist. Oh, what?
Yeah. Hey, what?
What is that? This is Blake Neely came on the other day, and he had a one-suit onesie. You have Red John in a sombrero.
This is season 2, and this is season 6, and I think it's from the transpo department.
Oh, I love that.
Right.
They always had the best. They had the best swag. Those guys.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. I was able to score a T-shirt.
Yeah.
I love that. I want a sombreroed Red John, but I think maybe because it was
on the back it says Rojo John. Rojo Juan.
Juan Rojo. I love that. Oh my God, that is so funny. Would love to know, how do you start off on a gig as a script supervisor? What does that journey look like?
So I believe how it started was I was working on Gilmore Girls, and Chris Long was a guest director. And he and I became really good friends on that show. He was really fun to work with. And we kind of stayed in contact. I think from there, I was invited on to Dirt, which was the Courtney Cox show for FX.
Sure.
And we did that for a season and a half. And then I went on to do Raising the Bar, which was Stephen Bochco. And Chris came on as a guest director, and he says, "Hey, I'm on this new show. They just did the pilot. It's called The Mentalist, and they need a script supervisor." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." So Chris Long was the one who brought me on.
Love that. Chris has been such a recurrent sort of engine behind the scenes of all of this. A lot of people have referenced how wonderful both he and Bruno were to work for, because they were both slightly unconventional in their approach to things. What was your sort of takeaway from the working environment on The Mentalist? I know that we were very young in our career. We were very green. You might not have noticed, but you know,
she noticed. She
I'm
noticed.
sure you. I know you noticed with a heavy.
Is this your
dose
first
of
time on
irony.
set? What do you? Yeah, right.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Keep it in the same hand. Stop switching it back and forth.
Stop touching that. Yeah.
No, you said this, not that.
You used your left hand the last time.
Yeah.
Keep using your left hand.
Keep using that left hand.
On the subject of continuity, I'm glad that you're on this episode, because it's been a hot streak for Owain's hair. The last few episodes have been absolute bedlam with my hair.
Love it.
And I can't even imagine.
Spiky.
It was pretty spiky.
I'm just glad I didn't have anything to do with that. I just, that we leave that to the hair and makeup department. What I had to watch out for was mostly like girls with their hair, if they had their hair like this, or if they had their hair back, or if they touched it, or untucked it. That was one of the things that I had to watch a lot of, and thankfully, Lisbon, pretty much her hair was pretty short, so it kind of just
It
did what it did.
fell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I didn't have to
Yeah.
worry too much about that. Van Pelt, I think she mostly wore it in a ponytail, slicked back in a ponytail. I don't think that it was except for when she was on.
Except for when she looked like she was coming directly out of Vidal Sassoon's salon. You
Yeah,
know, we have talked about the fact
Or
that
off
Van
off
Pelt
the
did
red
have
carpet or
some.
something. Yeah.
Yeah,
she
Van
had
Pelt did
beautiful
have some
hair.
rather spectacular hair.
Yeah.
You know, I'm
I'm
not
not.
saying that there aren't cops out there with
Yeah.
equally wonderful hair, but there was. So you bring up an interesting point. Where does the purview of the script supervisor begin and end? I mean, I'm assuming that your sort of main focus is elements within the scene rather than people's appearance. But as you said, it then begins to expand to things like, is your hair forward? Is it back? Is it,
So think
so
about all the
your
stuff that
eyes on everything?
yeah. So think about all the stuff I have to take care of. If the words are correct, which way your
Mm,
eye line is. If you
mhm.
sit or stand on a particular line, if you have your hand or you drink or whatever it is that you're doing, your actions. Pretty much what I do is I try to memorize the scenes that we're doing for that day and really get to know the scene that we're doing right then and there. So I'll memorize the lines. And then as we're doing our blocking rehearsal, I will watch what the actors do. And, sometimes when they're doing it, they have one idea. And then when they get on set and we're filming it and they're like, I'm going to do something completely different. Malcolm McDowell would do that. He would do one thing during blocking rehearsal. And then as we were filming,
Uh-huh.
he'd do something completely different. I'm like, mother, I would just get like, oh, but most of the time what I'll do is I will watch what an actor does and I'm like, okay, he crossed over there on this line, and I just like make little notes. And
Mhm.
when you're drinking, okay, you have the bag in your right hand or you have the bag in your left hand, or just, I just try to make notes on my script on basically my sides, the sides that they give us.
Sure.
And
And you know what? And just as a quick note, Cheryl's being very modest about it when she says she makes little notes. I looked at Cheryl's binder, and her binder is the script, full size
Yeah.
script. It looked like a schematic for a jet engine. I mean, I was like, I couldn't follow any of it, right? And so Cheryl's on top of it, like it's being handled, 100%.
yeah, so you have to, based on how many cameras you use, a line dictates like, okay, we did this. A squiggly line means that's off camera or we didn't see that. And when you got like two, most of the time I think we just had two cameras, but shows that I've worked on since we've had like 3, 4 cameras, so that gets
Mm.
overwhelming.
Right.
But
And
you know,
you have to look after the continuity for every single one of those shots, so that if you're in
yeah,
a
and
3-camera
so
situation,
that's
that's
the
that's
thing.
still all
So
you?
you
That's
have props.
nuts.
You have props, you have cameras. So on top of the camera, I have to take okay, I'm taking care of, I'm keeping track of film rolls, like which camera roll, are we on A1, A2, A3, B1, B2, B3, which sound roll we're on, when we switch, how many takes we're doing, how long the takes are. Then I have to write a brief description of what A camera gets, what B camera gets. If it's good on this one. Oh, this one was good up until this line. So you have to it's a lot of work. And then you're
Right.
watching wardrobe, you're watching
That's what
hair, makeup, you're watching. So sometimes women will come in and they have their fingernails are done and then they weren't supposed
Mhm.
to have them done. And you're like, oh my God, why did you do your nails?
I
Um,
had that a lot.
it
Yeah, on the show.
you'd be surprised.
you're like in charge of every department. Like you track
Crazy.
every department. Yeah. Mhm.
Right.
Right. Mhm. Right.
Sure.
Right. Right.
Mm. Well, um, sure. the it is a lot. It is a lot of work, and then on top of it, you've got actors like this guy who you have to make sure that his accent doesn't sound wobbly as well. So that was another big consideration, I'm sure, for the Mentalist. Yeah, Alaska.
Yeah. Ah,
Well, you
yeah.
know why? Because when you're learning an American accent, we're taught as Brits that there's the hard rhotic R is the signature sound of American, and what you have with a without wishing to get into a linguistics class here, what you have with the Brit sound is a much more truncated kind of flick sound. So we were always told that the one of the simplest and easiest ways to kind of authenticate the American accent was to lean hard on that rhotic R, which is why you probably got a lot of overcompensation. But I mean, I can't even imagine. And I'll say this to your massive credit, Cheryl, is that I always remember you being incredibly calm, incredibly even tempered, in spite of all of the things that you had to have
Deal
in
with.
your lane. And I've worked with script supervisors who are far more militant about certain details and won't let things go. How do you decide what is filterable? Where you look at it and you go, okay, because what I loved about your process was that it never cut across us. You were like, okay, I would like this. That's close enough. Well done. But there was never a feeling of we needed to go again for you. You would always seem to find a way to make it work. And I really
Make it work.
admired that. Would you say that whilst being detail oriented, you were also secure enough to be able to say, that's close enough? Or, because I find that there are some people who just will not let a single thing go. Yeah. He looked too handsome in this scene. Yeah.
What is wrong with you, man?
Yeah. We need exactly. I'm sure that was a conversation you had with many directors, Cheryl. Yeah.
You're an idiot.
It's like it's
Yeah.
like we've never left. What sort of experience did you bring coming into The Mentalist? Tim and I this was the first series that I had ever done that had any legs. So we were super, super green. W- Was there something different about the show? Did you know from the beginning, oh, this has the makings of something that might go for a minute? Sure.
Mhm.
Oh,
They were
Lance.
both in this episode, by the way.
They were. I saw them.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Oh, was it?
Absolutely.
Were
Yeah.
you in that? That's so funny. What do you say in it?
And yeah, that was you. 100% that was you. Yeah. And
Amazing.
Geary, who we're gonna have on next, he
Next,
was
yeah.
he was also in it. Yeah.
Our director of photography. Amazing. Yeah. Hmm. What did you work with Simon on prior to The Mentalist? Yeah. How funny.
So I hadn't watched The Mentalist in a long time, in a long, long, long time.
Mm.
Since you invited me to be on the show, I've kind of like, hey, I'll look at The Mentalist and see what's going on with this, because
Yeah.
it's so different from working on it because you work out of
Of course.
out of context and out of order.
Yeah.
I have the script, I know what happens, but we're filming it out of order, and then you don't really get to see the assembled piece because you're usually working the night that it's on TV.
Right.
Yeah.
So, having said that, I went back and watched a few of the first season. I was like going, huh, I never really noticed how when somebody said something about love and loss, how they would kind of like we would do a shot on Simon, and he had this look like a little bit of like, yeah, it's affecting him. It's still
hitting him.
affecting him.
My one word remembrance, actually, it seems like a good time to discuss it, is the word meta.
Interesting.
Come on.
We did it.
Come on, we did it.
We did it.
We did it. Wow, I love that so all season long.
Spouses. And
Cheryl.
Cheryl's with
And
spouses.
Cheryl's with
And Owen and
spouses.
mine. Again, one more time, Owen.
Meta.
Finally.
We nailed
You
it.
guys called each other.
No, that was
No.
what Owen wanted to do from like the pilot that we were doing. He's like,
Really?
I hope one day we come up with the same. We did it, bro.
Good
Yeah.
work, man. Good work.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love it.
I was here to witness
Only
it.
took
I
us-
love it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Cheryl's
that's-
episode. Right.
You made it happen, Cheryl.
Yay.
And it was so meta that at times it was almost, when you look into one of those like refracting glass things and there's
Yeah.
like layers within the layers within the layers. That's how this episode felt to me, because we had, and I don't know if
You
people,
mean like kaleidoscope?
the kaleidoscope,
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
kind of it became so. You have to bear in mind for the viewers at home, the crew that are being shown as the crew are our crew in the
Our
main.
crew.
Not
Our
all of
crew.
them, though.
The woman. Not all of
Right.
them. No, there were some actors in there as well. The woman playing the wife is Simon Baker's real wife of the time, Rebecca Rigg.
Nuts.
So
Yeah.
that's meta enough. Just to add another sort of layer onto it, I found out that the director. Do you know who the director was? The actor who played the director?
I looked him up, and he's Paul Giamatti's brother.
Paul
Yeah,
Giamatti's
Marcus.
brother. Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I was
Right.
like,
I like that.
Giamatti.
That's a good one.
There was something about him that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Marcus, I think his name is. And I was like, who does this guy remind me of? And then I was like, he's doing a slight Paul Giamatti thing. And then I was like, oh, no, he's not. He's doing, I'm the brother of Paul Giamatti in real life.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I had another meta layer sort of baked in there, and that was the guy who played the agent. I'd done a series with him several years before where he had guested, and I remember locking him in an ice chest in Kitchen Confidential. So, but he was back, and he was rather hilarious, I thought, as the agent, and had one of the funniest exchanges I thought of the whole episode was between you and him, Tim, when you were in the interrogation room, and he went, I went to jail for one of my clients. Sounds pretty good. You were like, you became the slave of a very big inmate for your client.
Violent
Doesn't sound
felon
so-
or whatever.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's like, oh, okay. So what was interesting, and let me dive in, and I'll give the synopsis of the episode of Craig. The CBI team is called to Hollywood, where former state senator Felix Hansen is found shot to death in a restaurant parking lot. Investigation reveals he had been financing a film project for his actress wife and might have ties to drugs and on-set relationships, which leads the team into the tangled dynamics of celebrity, ambition, and deception on a movie set. And then just to add to the meta of it all, we're in Hollywood. So this is the first kind of unashamed episode that is actually set in LA. And I forget that. I forget that we're not in LA, that we are, in the show at least, in Sacramento.
Yeah.
Because how many times did
and-
we actually go to Sacramento?
And
I
just
think
to,
we
and just
went
to
there
add
3
into it, since Owen and I had the same word, for the
Meta,
first time.
love that.
The further meta, Simon had a scene with his stand-in, Sean.
Yes.
So that's even more. Sean playing Simon, playing Jane, had a scene with Sean.
Yes.
So,
That's crazy.
And what I also loved about the show, I guess this was an irresistible. It's very difficult, I think, when series try and shed light on the entertainment industry. Sometimes it can be, I think, a bit of an inside joke or dangerously sort of self-reflective. What was interesting about this was that the perception of LA, as we move into LA, every single person that we question or who's sort of in a ring of suspicion, they're all actors. I love it. It's like, isn't that the guy from the beer commercial?
Yeah.
Or the one with the llama? No, the one with the toga. It's like literally every single person in LA is an actor, which I guess is
that's pretty accurate.
Not entirely
and
inaccurate.
real quick for our viewers out there, Sean played the forensic guy at the crime scene.
Yeah.
Where Simon walked up, Patrick Jane walked up to him and asked him if he had keys on him. Yes.
He's wearing a blue polo shirt.
I'll set the scene from a meta standpoint of that day. I remember being very excited about filming this day because we'd come towards the end of the season. The show was quite well known already, and we were in our breakout first season. So it's nice, obviously, as an actor, to be able to be out and about and in town and have that sense of event. Do you know what I mean? Like, we were on Hollywood Boulevard on a recognized show with people walking by being like, oh, it's The Mentalist. Yeah. And I vividly remember...
Chaplin and Marilyn Monroe with us as well. I mean, can you
get any better than that?
More Hollywood?
Yeah. It doesn't get any better than that. Do you remember where we were shooting exactly on Hollywood Boulevard?
Wasn't it near the Scientology area?
It's exactly where it was. It was.
Yeah.
It was. So we were opposite the Scientology Center, and I remember we were in a disused parking lot, and halfway through the day, the security cameras from the Celebrity Center started pointing towards us. So I guess that's another meta layer right there. We're being watched.
Yes.
So it was, while we're making something for people to watch. So there was just so many levels of meta that I kind of didn't even know where to begin and end.
I mean,
can I tell you something? That happened more than once on our show.
Oh, really?
No. How on earth does that happen? Like, isn't it just a question of, right?
I don't know, but
she looks reasonably like her headshot.
So somebody would come in, usually it was like either Chris or Bruno would come visit the set, and they're like, who's that? And I'm like, oh, he's playing, or was with a guy. I can't remember. But I said, oh, he's playing, XYZ. And he's like, what? Right. That's not who we picked. We picked the younger guy. I'm like, oh, well, we've already shot.
That's the role for a woman.
Yeah.
Oh my God. How fun.
That's amazing. I can't believe we've done that.
And
on multiple occasions.
Hilarious.
Yeah. We've used the same person was killed, I think, twice on our show. The flashbacks, they're the struggling, and then we find the body. And then he was. There was
one, I read about that. There was one in like season 2, and then he came back and died again in season 6, right?
Yeah.
I missed that. I didn't see that one. Yeah.
I mean, why not?
Well,
just
real quick, I wanted to throw in a couple bits of trivia, some Easter eggs before we actually get into the meat of it. There's a section during the shooting of A Dozen Roses where they show the monitor, and on that monitor, it has this running meter on it, and it says 1,146 feet of film. Rolling. So that was before we made the move to digital. There's a great little sort of self jab where Gabriel Fanning's the director of A Dozen Roses makes that comment. I've come very close to having to take a TV gig. And I thought that was a great line to kind of poke fun at ourselves. And then finally, my favorite blooper of all time was in this episode. And that was when Rigsby and Cho are in the car staking out the Hanson residence.
Animal noises.
And it says jungle sounds, animal noise. I could not keep it together. I couldn't.
Dude. We had about 40 goes at that because I remember you vividly.
Well, it was because the animal noises. Because in my mind, every time I said animal noises, I imagined monkeys screeching in the jungle,
Yeah.
and that's not calming. And so every single
For
time I
some
said
people,
it,
maybe.
yeah, right. And then they ended up changing the line. So it went from the actual line is animal noises, but I think Cheryl, did you change the line? Somebody changed the line to
No.
roaring fire. Yeah, so they literally just said, "Yeah, Tim can't
Is
keep it together on animal noises, so
Wait
we're
a
going to
second.
put in roaring fire."
Animal noises didn't make the final cut?
No,
See, because all I can remember is the blooper, because this was a blooper-heavy
That's what I'm saying.
episode.
Yeah.
I remember Simon and Robin walking out of the Malibu residence, and both of them having a really hard time. So there was a multiple retakes of that. But to this day, I didn't clock the roaring fire, because I just remember sitting with you having so many to a point where even I was like, oh, it'll help if I just look the other way. So there's a shot of me like looking out the window. I was like, don't look at him. Don't look at him with the animal noises.
To this day, when I watch that blooper, I start laughing.
That's so funny.
It's so funny. And so so the original line was jungle sounds, animal noises, but in the final edit, it ended up jungle sounds and a roaring fire. So
wow,
that was a little bit of a bit of trivia there for you.
Funny. That is so funny. What I did love about this episode, and I think that this is what maybe made some of the performances tricky, is that I think it's very hard when you're dealing with a shamelessly entertainment-based episode. So much of the episode was about performing and about sincere performance versus insincere performance. And so as an actor, and I felt for both Rebecca and the girl playing the daughter,
Sydney.
because Sydney, because that's a very hard, nuanced ask of an actor. It's like, okay, show your character being a bad actor here versus being a sincere actor there. And then you have to see that gear switch so that the final confession scene becomes very performative, And what was interesting was that this was really sort of Mentalist at its most honest, I guess. This was a crime of passion, a crime of containment, all about, control and about money and an overbearing husband. And it was really interesting that it came down to this final confessional moment that, of course, Jane is orchestrating, where he's like, no, don't believe that. And what I found hilarious, and for me, the crowning moment of the episode, was Rebecca's character seemed largely unmoved in the main by the death of her husband. And obviously it's because she murdered him, but seemed really not at all perturbed. I'll go back to work, I'll do whatever. Just didn't seem bothered. The only time I saw her looking bothered was when Simon jumps in and he said, you wouldn't believe so much. There is a touch of the afternoon soap about you. And she went, that's a terrible thing to say. And I was like,
that hit her.
what an amazing way to throw actors under the bus. Didn't care at all about the death of a spouse. But the minute you went, a little bit of soap in there.
Yeah, I don't believe the performance.
How dare you?
How dare you? That stuck out to me. But I thought the theme of performer versus reality, and I thought it dovetailed really nicely, because I guess Jane's whole skill was always about reading between the lies. That was the tagline, wasn't it, for one of the seasons? He reads between the lies, and he's able to do that because for the vast majority of his previous career, he was a liar and a charlatan and a performer and someone who maybe was peddling something that wasn't sincere. But what I loved about that as a device was that it makes those moments that you talked about earlier, Cheryl, really pop. Like that final moment where he's in the interrogation room with the wife. She finally gives it up and then gives that final moment where she says, you have to hang on to happiness because it's fleeting. That look on Simon's face, he has this very signature sort of inward introspection look. And when he says it to himself and he says, yeah, that's true. That's true. I thought that was such a beautiful moment where we really saw behind the performance of Jane to the sincerity of a man who's broken. There's a very unraveled, very damaging person.
That natural charm kind of, masks a lot of that. And so when those flashes come out, you go, whoa, wait, I'm not used to seeing that. What is that? Yeah.
Yeah, and those landed heavier with me and more sincerely with me. It was for me a very assured episode from a directorial standpoint, and I was not at all surprised with that. Yeah, and I know that Leslie was, you know, a firm favorite. If not, you're probably, it'd be safe to say, your favorite director of the series, right?
Yep.
And
I love
I noticed that. Did you? How was that experience from a from your standpoint, Cheryl?
working with Leslie.
Yeah.
She's great. From what I understand, she started out. She'd done soap operas in Japan, and
Mm.
she met this Buddhist guy, and he kind of influenced her. She wrote a short story on him.
Well, she
She
started
directed
out
the
as a
short
dancer.
story. Yeah,
So,
and
yeah, she was a
and
professional dancer. Yeah.
this documentary or this short story that she did won an Academy Award, which got the Steven Spielberg interested in her, and then it just propelled her career. She did a lot of Twin Peaks, and
Mm-hmm.
you told me that in all her Twin Peak episodes, she always had something big, like a marching band or some kind of like
Big
uh,
set piece.
just a lot. And she always likes really high, wide, booming down shots with the cranes. Um,
Mm.
she likes to cover her scenes. She does a lot of coverage.
Yeah.
And and I think that she's an actor's director. And she really likes to, get in there and talk with the actors and likes to see how they want to come at it.
So when you are dealing with, an episode like, because there was a lot of protagonists in this episode, like how deep do you have to go in your overview of, like, let's say you got that big Hollywood scene, right, where all of the looky-loos are there, we're investigating the car. Do you have to also keep eyes on the background and significant things that are happening with all of the supporting actors?
I have to really sometimes just disconnect my brain with watching a show. I pick stuff out and I'm like going, oh, that doesn't match. Oh, that's different.
Right.
I noticed that one of the opening shots, it's like you got the background. It's always like I call it Grand Central Station because you always have to have the crosses. It's like the wiping of the lens, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, but we're at a funeral. Why are people crossing the lens? I don't know if you guys remember, but towards the beginning of The Mentalist, I wouldn't read any of the off-camera dialogue. Because I would freeze up. I don't know. I don't know. I felt more and more comfortable doing it with you guys. I guess because we were kind of like
we were friends.
And so it's like I felt comfortable doing it. And I got better and better doing the off-camera dialogue with you guys. There was one, it was a kidnapping plot. And we were in the CBI, and I think we had the reels, we were listening to the kidnappers and they had the kidnap victim there. And I had to read like 4 different parts because it was supposed to be cut in between. We were doing like we're at the kidnapper's lair. We're at the CBI. We're at the van that's outside, and it was like all these different pieces. And I had to do all 4 of these characters.
I'm the kidnapper.
Hi, I'm also the kidnapper. Exactly. And after I did it, you guys gave me an applause. You guys are like, "Oh my God." And it was really fun. For instance, knowing when is the right time to approach an actor when they're having problems with the lines. It's like, there's been times where directors are like, go tell him. And I'm like, no, if I go and tell this person, this is the line, it's going to f them up even more. It's like, I have to you got to be able to like read it and feel it and
read the room. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot of reading the room and feeling it and just knowing when to approach somebody and when to say something. One of the things I had to learn too is not to be so opinionated and speak my mind. Learning how to curtail that because I had a tendency to really say how I felt about things, and I've had a problem of masking my my true feelings of stuff.
Well, no, I think to your earlier point, Cheryl, every single person is laser focused on a set on their one specific task. You have 5 million tasks. And so, you might be given a little grace for having a rather full head and the need to be able to say, guys, I just need to focus on this. My remembrance of you was just always how politically savvy you were, just to paint a picture to people at home. we have Video Village, which is a collection of the monitors where everyone watches, and it's where all the powers that be sit. So you have your producer, executive producer, usually a representative from the studio and or network there, and that is the sort of controlling hub. And then sat front and center with all those folks is you, and so you are literally in the thick of it. And to your point, like, I've now got to pick the politically right time to be able to maybe go and have a delicate conversation with an actor who's struggling to remember his words, and also picking that right time and knowing when that is, but also trying to please my big bosses who are sat either side of me. That's not an easy task.
You guys made me laugh, and it was just fun. It was really, really fun.
On the first day of shooting The Mentalist, I walked up, I think it was stage 14. And I was just in a jeans and a t-shirt. I may have told the story before, but I walked up to the set and I asked a grip. I was like, do you know where, and this was like the first day. Nobody knew anybody, do you know where base camp is, And he went, yeah, it's right over there. But, like, I need to check in. He's like, it's right over there. But before you go, can you bring this light onto stage 14? The guy thought I was a grip and asked me, I don't remember who it was, but asked me, and I had just a backpack, t-shirt, and jeans. That was it. And I was like, yeah, okay, I can help you with this. And then,
and you did?
Bring the light in, and I go,
that.
so base camp's over here, right? And yeah, I just, from there, like, I've gotten that many times in my career.
And I used to frequently ask you to, carry lights for me, even into seasons 4, 5, and 6. I'd be like, Tim,
for you, it was the umbrella.
Lighting, will you?
It was more the umbrella over your head.
Do you mind holding this extra spotlight just so I can, get under the eyes here? Eyes. Perfect. Just get the eyes. Get the eyes.
So I forgot. It reminded me when you said, well, when you came onto The Mentalist, when you first came on, did you know anybody? I had worked with Bruno on a movie that he wrote down in Mexico called The Expendables.
How funny.
And
funny.
Yeah, and I
Alone? Was he in it?
No, he wasn't in it. He was just he wrote the script. And it was with it was like with Robin Givens and
Sylvester Stallone.
No, it wasn't that Expendables.
Doing that joke, sorry.
No, but it was funny because I remember I'm like
a different These were other expendable people.
Yeah, but it wasn't that one. But it was.
It wasn't Lundgren, Stallone, and
Bruce Willis,
and every other action star. Yeah,
Bruno wrote a film for those guys. Wow,
that's a departure. Yeah. This document about Bruno trying to articulate what he wants this show to be. He talks about a sort of a burgeoning interest in psychics, and he's like, for a long time I've wanted to mine the showmanship and the pretense of the clairvoyant and the psychic. And he said, and there's a bit where he ends the pitch, and it's a beautiful bit, and he was like, because that's where the world happens, not out here, but here. And then he's written in brackets, I'm pointing to my head. And I thought that was a really nice way of saying it. And because the minute you can unpack stuff that's going on in here, and I think that, to Bruno's credit, if the story of The Mentalist being maybe the 6th or 7th thing that he pitched in the room after a number of other things all got turned away, thank goodness, because that kind of, the story goes, apparently, Cheryl, that he pitched a bunch of stuff.
Didn't he do Rome before this show?
He did, yeah.
So that was successful, wasn't it?
Huge, but obviously a completely different world. And at that time, the separation between network and HBO was enormous. It was, and a lot of people have talked about how his sort of his mentality and his work ethic felt very different to network television, and very kind of not. Blake Neely tells a great story about how, he sat down with Bruno gave him the MO, and then he went back to him when the mix was ready of the music. Blake says to him, if you just want to pop in and, give you notes, tell me what works, tell me what doesn't. And Bruno's like, why would I do that? We sat down, had a conversation. You're a professional. I'm assuming it's going to be great. And Blake was like, oh, and then he was like, but then I realized that when someone does that for you, that makes me want to work even harder. Because now they've thrown all of that focus on you. And he's right. Bruno's absolutely right. There should be an expectation that when you turn up on set, everyone in their relative department knows exactly what they're doing. Of course, we know this isn't the case. I used to love doing scenes with Tim because I knew there would never be any worry about, is it going to be okay? Has Tim brought a level of preparation? I always felt comfortable that our cast would do that and our crew would do that. And I think that level of assurance and that level of ability to be able to have the confidence to play in that arena, I think that's when you can make great things. Show me. Oh my gosh. Oh my, look at us.
And then
Do you know
hold
what's
on,
do you know what's funny? I have another picture that I know that you've taken that we've used in a lot of promo stuff in the
is it
museum.
this one?
It's that
Yeah.
one. I knew you were gonna do. I knew you were gonna do that one.
What is it? I wrote models by day, crime fighters at night.
I mean, just fighting crime never looked this good. Look at that.
Yeah,
Whatever.
look at them.
Love it. This week in GQ. Love it. I love it. Amazing memories.
Yeah.
Cheryl Starbuck, you are just as phenomenal as I remember. And thank you for
Thanks,
bringing
honey.
the same fun and humor
Yeah.
on the TV Police. It is just such a treat for us to be able to invite our Mentalist family and also our friends and walk down memory lane with you. So we really appreciate your
Cheryl.
time. Thank you so, so much. Tune
You
in
guys
next week
keep
where we
plugging.
will be tackling the next episode of The Mentalist, which I believe is Red Sauce.
Red sauce.
And we will be enjoying the wonderful guest, our cinematographer, Geary McLeod, is doing Red Sauce
All
with us. Is that right?
right.
Yeah,
Geary.
so just back-to-back favorites. I love it.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we've been the TV Police. Check us out on tvpolice.com and stream us on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. Until next week. Later.
See you soon.
Bye.